Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, June 20th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Ball State game in 77 days, the game against Michigan in 161 days. We're sponsored today by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, on today's show, we're talking about the 5 players who are in town for official visits this weekend with the Ohio State Buckeyes, and this ranges from high-profile player who is probably on a relatively low-drama visit to currently committed player who has some decisions to make following this weekend, and then 3 guys who are potentially still could be added to this class. Going to welcome in Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeInsiders.com. Tony, let's start with a nice, easy one. Jir Brown, wide receiver, now playing for Big Walnut High School, just northeast of Columbus, 5-star player. Seems like this is probably a relatively low drama visit.
Boy, if it's not, you've got issues. If this is the problem visit, no. Just watching him over the past week, doing a little bit of 7-on-7, and then also being there at the final day of camp, basically almost there to host Jet Harrison, it seemed at sometimes, and Christopher Vargas, the 5-star quarterback. So he's already a part of the program, and I think this is almost just, well, everybody else gets to do an official visit, so I want one too, kind of thing, where everything is confirmed and there's no drama because everything has already been worked out. He's been around forever. He's seen everything, and none of this will be a surprise for him.
Yeah, local player has been around the program, as you said, a whole bunch over the last few years. And listen, man, everybody wants cookie cake. You get your cookie cake on your official visit, unless the NCAA has changed the rules on that, which who knows? Maybe they have. Next one, another guy who's committed, but some more questions on this one. And this is someone who we've also seen a bunch this week, talked to this week. That's quarterback Brady Edmonds, the currently committed 2027 quarterback for the Buckeyes class. But as he told us earlier in the week, there are some questions that he needs to get answers to this weekend to figure out if that's going to stay.
Yeah, and when we talked with him on Wednesday, that's what he said. He had some questions. He wants to be a Buckeye, and it just comes down to the answers that he gets determining whether Ohio State wants him to be a Buckeye, I guess, or wants him to be a Buckeye on his terms. And I don't know that his answers were any different on Thursday when he spoke again after the camp there. And it was just interesting to see. He talked with a bunch of media, a group of media on Wednesday, talked with another group on Thursday, and is just laying it out there a little bit in terms of, I want to be a Buckeye, but this is a business, so I also have to keep UCLA in mind, and UCLA is a very viable thing. It's an in-state school for him from where he's from in Huntington Beach, and he really, really likes Bob Chesney, the new head coach there, and there's a lot of buzz there. So there is a viable alternative. So if Ohio State wants to keep him, they need to, I don't want to say they need to make him happy, but you kind of need to make all of your recruits happy, don't you?
Well, you have to talk, relationships and comfort in relationships. We've used that phrase for a million years about recruiting. And yeah, there's other stuff that goes into it now too, but you kind of have to be comfortable. Everyone sort of has to be comfortable with what's the situation. What is this class going to look like? Because he seemed like he was open to potentially having a second quarterback in the class, but if he has other options, then maybe you're going to explore other options at that point. So that is sort of the little bit of mystery gray area where you may have a little more clarity coming out of this weekend than you do right now. Next up, the biggest visitor this weekend, Karlos May, the 4-star defensive tackle, listed at 330 pounds. I'm going to guess he is not going to be an edge player, Tony, and that's okay because Larry Johnson has several edge players already committed. Still looking for another guy on the interior. This is one where this is a guy you're trying to get to pull out of Alabama, which they've done with more success recently than they have in previous decades, but certainly someone who they would love to add to the class, but not necessarily going to be easy to get him out of the South.
No, and out of Birmingham, and yet, he recently came out and said Georgia is his leader, followed by Ohio State. And so if you're number 2 going into your official visit, you've got an opportunity for Ohio State has the opportunity to make themselves number 1 in this one. And this will be his last visit, and then he'll decide next month or announce his decision next month. So there's a lot at stake here because he is one of the top defensive tackles in the South, Tom. And as you know, if you can get one of the top defensive tackles in the South, you should probably do it. and he's big and he moves well, and he's got all of the SEC schools after him. He's taken an official visit to Florida State. So this is a guy that every program would love to have, and Ohio State has a decent shot, but it's always an uphill battle trying to bring in these major defensive tackles from the South. Sometimes Ohio State can do it, like a Caden McDonald, but many more misses than hits in this attempt.
Yeah, it feels like you're kind of fighting uphill against the entire SEC, where you look at the offer list, you look at the top, whatever group it is with a lot of these kids, and it's 4 SEC schools and Ohio State, or 5 SEC schools and Ohio State. And it's which one doesn't belong and why. And then, what is the stuff that makes Ohio State appealing? Is that enough to outweigh the geographic proximity and the fact that you probably grew up rooting for some of those teams? So that's certainly one that Ohio State would love to win, not one that you would necessarily put in the very likely column, but certainly in the possibility column, as you said, number 2 going into your official visit. Still another 6 months or so till signing day. So yeah, definitely one to watch there with Karlos May. Another one to watch is Blake Wong, 4-star wide receiver. He's someone who he was at Ohio State somewhat recently, and it seemed like things were maybe trending in a decent direction there, but he's gotten a lot of attention as well. And he's a West Coast kid, has gotten some attention from some of those West Coast schools. So it's another one where you're fighting geography a little bit.
Yeah, just coming off of his Oregon official visit, Ohio State will get in there, and then he'll make his decision. I believe he announces next week on the 27th. So I guess would that be a week from Saturday? And so this is your opportunity if you want him to show your plans for him, how they would use him. Do they want him as a Z? Do they want him as a slot? And that's just a small part of it, because then all of the official visit stuff, and you're talking about networking and NIL and all, only I don't know how much of the actual pie is football. I remember a few years back, I asked one of the recruiting people during a press conference, and this was like at the beginning of NIL. I'm like, when you're putting these presentations together, if this was a pie chart, how much of the pie is NIL? And she said at the time, about a third. And now I'm wondering, like, a third now may be actual football stuff for a lot of these official visits.
The pie chart looks like Pac-Man, and the yellow is NIL. I think that's probably the case with certain guys, but that's not necessarily. I think Ohio State has both said and sort of walked out in practice that people who are solely focused on NIL are probably not people who they are going to end up taking. And so that's, we'll see how that pie chart plays out here. The last one, this is a really, really fascinating case. Jordan Donahoo, he's a wide receiver. He is currently unranked. Now, that is something that, boy, I was trying to think back. When was the last time Ohio State took an unranked wide receiver? Because this is one where you love the measurables, you love the possibility, but it is really all potential here. And, this is something we have seen them do at times in the past at wide receiver and elsewhere, but it is an unusual profile to be taking an official visit to Ohio State.
Yeah, out of Florida, 6'4", 185, good size, has offers from Minnesota, Cincinnati, Georgia Tech, Kansas State, places that Ohio State should be able to win when they're competing against with these official visits. And so this is an indication of how things now are, I think, in the NIL era, where you've got Jir Brown, that is an elite NIL prospect. You've got Blake Wong, like if they were to sign him, he's a top 250 player. And then, so there's the money would be a little bit different, maybe a lot different there. And then you've got somebody like Jordan Donahoo, who is, I think 24/7 has him the number 149 wide receiver in the nation, number 1184 overall. So you're talking below Pat Elflein in 2012, below DeJuan Jones, and he was like a top 999 player. But those guys worked out different positions, you could argue, but yeah, it's just the tiers now with which you have to operate in the NIL space makes it so, you've got a guy, a project, if you will, a nice athletic profile, Bod Miller that we talked about before the show in terms of just guys that could work out. And so you put some time in, but you're not necessarily going to put the money into, but all of this is money. Like the time investment is a money investment as well. So you don't want to just, just take that guy. It's like there's got to be certain things that boxes have to be checked, and I guess he checks enough.
Yeah, well, I think it's like Major League Baseball teams like the Guardians, for example, are really good at this, at identifying pitchers with like one or two really intriguing traits. And then, hey, we have shown in the past that we can build on those traits and develop some of the other things. And sometimes those players turn into stars, but sometimes they don't. It's just it's a little bit of a lottery ticket. So one to sort of keep an eye on there. That could be a little bit of an unusual addition to Ohio State's recruiting class if he does end up committing. But there you go. 5 players taking official visits this weekend with the Buckeyes. We will be back as soon as we have more information. We'll probably try and have Juck on early next week to talk about, okay, what happened on these official visits? Where do things stand with all these guys, and much more. Thanks again to our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.